Non mi dire d'aspettare il domani che verrà. È una porta che tu chiudi fra me e te. Se stasera ti decidi a rispondermi di sì, i domani che verranno li dedico solo a te. Meglio stasera che domani, oh mai, domani chi lo sa quel che sarà.
For this poor American who knows a little of your speech, be a nice Italian and start to teach. Go ahead, show me how in old Havana the lovers hold each other so tight. But I warn you, sweet paisana, that it had better be tonight. Hey, stasera, baby, go, go. Or as we later say, far to be done.
It Had Better Be Tonight is going to be our new band chart. You may be asking, why did she choose that song? Well, I can tell you that it is in concert F, it's in cut common time, and it's lots of fun to conduct. Your parts are going to be available on the Essential Elements website in PDF form. Now I've grouped them together as all of the clarinet, so if you're playing clarinet 2, just print off the pages that you'll need. Most of them are just 2 pages long. You'll also find a PDF of the conductor's score. This week you will have the opportunity to read the music that I do. Now it's not a sacred item, it's no magical secret business. Anyone's allowed to look at it. It's the best way to understand what's going on in the band and what you should be hearing when you play. But of course you should be hearing, and not just yourself, but what is going on. Reading the score can help you listen for the triangle or listen for the flutes. And this will encourage you to be, well, it will ensure that you become a better ensemble player. Now, you can choose to print out the conductor score. If you're going to do that, I suggest that you do it back to back. We're going to be using the first 12 pages while we stay in this key. The other way you can do it is there's a link to YouTube, and the conductor score will be up there as the music goes along. The pages will turn, and this is a great tool if you prefer to do it that way. Now, I don't want you to be overwhelmed by the first page. There's all those lines, flute all the way down to percussion. So don't be over. You don't have to be able to play all the instruments. You're just looking at the overall impression. When we look at a painting like this one by Monet, you get the overall impression. You see the textures and the colours and the impression that it gives the viewer. Sometimes it's warm, sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's angry, happy. When we look at a music score, you should be able to see the textures and the colours and the impressions that it's going to give the listener. It might be loud, it might be soft, it might be smooth, it might have lots of percussion. And so you should be able to see that on the overall page. When we look at a painting, you don't say, oh, look, let me count how many flowers there, how many petals in each flower. you just see the layers. You'll see that there's water, that there's lilies, that there's reflections, there might be some reeds, there might be some grass. And the same thing with the music. You don't have to read all the notes for all the instruments. If you're the conductor and you find that there's a problem with the sound, then you have to look more closely. But just to feel the music, you just look at the shape. You'll see the questions and the answers and the different layers. Now, so we look at the score, we see the overall picture. The YouTube link is up and you're watching it. And so what I'd like you to do is to start with by just clapping along. Beat 1 will be stronger, and we're in cut common time, so there will be 2 beats per bar. And so we'll go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Dee 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 doo dee doo ba. All right. When you're comfortable with that, I would like you, if you're feeling very game, live on the edge, try and conduct it. So it's going to go down and bounce, down and bounce. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1 being strong and 2 just a bounce at the bottom. 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh, that's out of focus, sorry. 2, 1, 2. And that's all it does the whole way through. But it should give you a better feeling of 2, I hope. And you can imagine that would be really hard to play in 4. So hard. Now, what else was I going to say? It could be 2. Oh, this bit down here. This bit where the sound comes out. Dip, dot is called the ictus. It's Latin, point of sound, all right? And so when we conduct, we don't go like this unless we're lost. It's 1, 2, 1, beep, beep, bop, beep, bop, all right? Ictus. So we've done that. Okay. Oh, now this song has lots of different articulations, so I found this great video for you to have a look at, talking about the different sorts of articulation. Now your instrument is going to be a little bit different, but I think seeing the different ways explained will be great for you.
Hey, welcome to 12 Tone. When we talk about melodies, we're usually focusing on the specific notes. That's what gives your melody its shape, after all, and it's a big part of the emotional feel of the song. But what you play isn't the only thing that matters. It's also important to look at how you play it. The same notes can come across very differently depending on how you articulate them. Probably the most well-known articulations are the ones relating to note length. For instance, take this melody. We're just playing everything for as long as the notation says we're supposed to. This is called tenuto, and it's fine, but compare it to this. That's staccato, and it's a lot bouncier. Technically, staccato means you're supposed to play the note for half its duration, then rest for the other half, but it's often just used to describe any short, disconnected notes. On the other end, we have legato, which means the notes flow into each other. This is also called a slur, and how it sounds depends on the instrument you're playing. On something like a flute, where you can easily move from note to note, legato means that you play the phrase in one uninterrupted sound. On a piano, though, that's not possible. Each new note you play requires a new attack because each note is created by a different string. This makes true legato impossible on a piano, but skilled players may be able to manipulate their playing, carefully staggering their strikes and releases to create a similar effect. They might even vary the volume at which they play each note in order to create the illusion of a smoothly decaying sound. Speaking of volume, another common kind of articulation is based on how hard you play the note. Now, I'm not talking about the volume of a whole section here. That's dynamics, which is a slightly different thing. I'm talking about changing volume for a specific note. The simplest example is what's called the accent, where you just play a little bit harder than the surrounding melody. A similar tool is the sforzando, which is like an especially strong accent. There's also some more advanced techniques like marcato, meaning marked, which is basically a combination of an accent and staccato. Marcato can also be applied to whole sections, where it tends to mean that each note should be accented with strong initial attacks, kind of like the opposite of legato. And then there's my favorite dynamic articulation, the fortepiano, which literally means loud to soft. Here you start with a strong attack, then quickly drop down to a much quieter level. It's almost like staccato, but with a tail. A common variation of this, especially in horn sections, is to drop down, then slowly ramp back up to your original volume. This technique.
And so to finish off, we have our quiz. Yay! And let's see if you figured out, what our new key is. How many beats in the bar for some of the songs? Did you learn anything about Bach this week? So yeah, that will be up there, and I look forward to seeing your responses and hearing your NASA-bound recordings, and receiving your questions on what you can see on the conductor score. I know the first time I was given a score, I wanted to learn how to conduct power rock, and I was given something much harder. And I went back the next week with a list of questions, just like I've asked you to do. And I remember saying, can tubas play semiquavers? And Greg, who was my teacher, said, no, not really. But that doesn't stop people from writing it. Anyway, I hope that you are all keeping well. And now that the lockdown is being a little lifted, we're closer to seeing each other again. All right, I'll see you for lesson 6. Bye.
Stasera ti decidi a rispondermi di sì, i domani che verranno li dedico solo a te, meglio stasera che domani, oh